If you spent any amount of time on social media lately, you've probably seen these little guys, miniature cows. They're cute, they're fluffy, they're all over TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube. And apparently, everybody wants one. But here's the question. Are mini cows actually a good choice for a small farm? Or are they just regular cows in a slightly smaller package that still eat everything you've got and tear up all your pasture? Well, here at Hartland Oaks, we've got 3 mini cows living on just 5 acres, along with all of our other mini animals. There's Mabel, there's Rosie, and this little girl right here, is Ginger Snap. Say hi, Ginger Snap. Hi, Ginger Snap. And all 3 of these guys, they all are different. They all have different personalities. They're all different in many ways, even their breeds. So today I'm going to introduce you to our 3 mini cows, talk about what we believe their breeds are, and more importantly, talk about whether mini cattle actually make sense for somebody with a small farm or homestead. And if you're thinking about buying a mini cow, there are definitely a few things you need to know first. Let's start with Mabel. Mabel is probably what a lot of people picture when they think about a mini cow. She's small, she's friendly, and she absolutely loves attention. Mabel is half Mini Hereford and half Mini Belted Galloway. And if you've watched this channel for a while, you've probably seen Mabel before. She's become one of the friendliest animals on the farm. And that's something I want to point out right from the beginning. Well, I say that, but then it makes me think. Lately, she sometimes headbutts little kids at petting zoos. Ugh, right, Mabel? All right, but breed does matter. But how they're raised matters too. If you want mini cows that's going to come to you, let you scratch your head, and actually enjoy being around people, you're probably going to have a much better chance if the animal has been handled regularly. That's hard to say. Regularly when it's young. Mabel has had a lot of human interaction, and it shows. Now, Mini Herefords are basically smaller versions of traditional Hereford cattle. Hey guys, they're real cattle, not a completely different species. And they're generally known for being relatively docile and manageable. Belted Galloways are cattle you may have seen that have that distinctive white belt around their middle. Some people call them Oreos. But those genetics together, or put those genetics together, and you get our little tiny Mabel. And apparently, you also get an animal who believes her primary purpose in life is receiving scratches. Right, Mabel, you like scratches? Yes, you do. Mabel, she loves her scratches. Mabel sometimes just lays around and she'll let kids sit on her. She's a good girl most of the time. Most of the time. Then we have Rosie here. Rosie is a little more mysterious. We don't have a pedigree telling us exactly what Rosie is, so we've had to do some detective work based on her size, her appearance, and her characteristics. Right, Rosie girl? Ugh. And our best guess that Rosie is some type of Mini Angus cross. I want to emphasize the words best guess. Without registration papers or genetic testing, there's no way for us to tell you with absolute certainty what breeds Rosie is. But based on what we can see, Mini Angus or Angus influenced miniature cross is our best estimate. My wife Kristen found her for sale on Facebook Marketplace, so we brought her home to be T-Bone's girlfriend. T-Bone, that's a sore spot for us. He had to go on to a new home, and it's probably our fault because we babied him and he lost respect and fear of humans. He caused Kristen to get that ACL surgery. There's an entire video about letting him go. It was a sad day for us. Rosie has also already proven something pretty important around here. She's a good mama. And that brings us to mini cow number 3. That little brown and white one back there. This is Ginger Snap. And Ginger Snap, she was born right here at Hartland Oaks. Her mama is Rosie, and her daddy was our former mini bull, T-Bone. Now T-Bone was half Mini Hereford and half Mini Belted Galloway. So, assuming we're correct that Rosie is primarily Mini Angus, Ginger Snap would be approximately 50% Mini Angus, 25% Mini Hereford, and 25% Mini Belted Galloway. Again, that's an estimate because Rosie's genetics aren't documented. But whatever combination she ended up with, it worked because little Ginger Snap is pretty darn cute. Ginger Snap is also a great example of one of the reasons people become interested in miniature cattle in the first place. You get a lot of experience of raising cattle, but in a much smaller package. But there's something really important people need to understand. Mini cow doesn't necessarily really mean mini. When people hear mini cow, I think sometimes they're imagining something about the size of a golden retriever. That's not what we're talking about. These are still cattle. Depending on genetics, sex, age, and breeding, miniature cattle can still weigh several hundred pounds. Some can get considerably heavier than people expect. And that's one of the biggest mistakes I see people make when they're looking at cute baby mini cows online. They're looking at a calf. Of course it's tiny. It's a baby. The question isn't, how big is that calf? The question is, how big will the calf be when it's 3 or 4 years old? Because that's the animal you're actually buying. And that's also why I recommend asking about the parents. How tall is mom? How tall is dad? How much do they weigh? Are they actually miniature cattle? Because the term mini cow gets used pretty loosely sometimes. Why mini cows can be great for small farms. Now, let's talk about why we like them. One obvious advantage is size. Compared to full-size cattle, smaller cattle can generally require less feed and put less pressure on your pasture. That can be a major advantage when acreage is limited. Here at Hartland Oaks, we're working with about 5 acres, and we're not running a commercial cattle operation. Far from it. We've got horses, donkeys, goats, pigs, chickens, rabbits. Basically, Noah's Ark with a mortgage. So every animal we add has to fit into a relatively small operation. For somebody who wants the cattle experience without dedicating dozens or hundreds of acres to a large herd, miniature cattle can make a lot of sense. But, there's always a but. How many mini cows can you keep per acre? This is probably the question everybody wants answered. How much land do I need for a mini cow? And unfortunately, there isn't one magic number. Nope, not at all. I can't tell you. You have 2 acres, therefore you can have exactly 3 mini cows. It doesn't work that way. Your stocking rate depends heavily on your pasture. Where do you live? How much rainfall do you get? What type of grass do you have? How productive is your soil? Are you rotating pastures? Are you feeding hay? Are there other animals grazing that same property? What size are your cattle? 2 acres of really productive pasture is completely different from 2 acres of poor dry ground. And here's another thing people forget. Your property might be 5 acres, but that doesn't really mean you have 5 acres of pasture. You've got a house. You've got a barn. You've got a driveway. You might have a pond. Things take away from your actual grazing area. There is a better way to think about stocking. Instead of asking, how many mini cows can I put on 5 acres? I think the better question is, how much forage can my property sustainably produce? Because that's ultimately what matters. A cow doesn't care what your property survey says. She cares about what's growing underneath her feet. Mabel isn't out here thinking, according to the county appraisal district, Todd owns 5 acres. She's thinking, grass. That's it, grass. And probably, why isn't Todd scratching my head right now? Your local agricultural extension office can be an excellent resource for estimating stocking rates in your area because they understand the soil, the rainfall, and forage production where you live. And I would much rather start conservatively with fewer animals and discover that my pasture can support more than start with too many animals and destroy my pasture and empty my pocketbook buying hay and feed. Mini cows still need hay. Another misconception that if you've got grass, your feed bill disappears. Nope. Depending on your climate and pasture, you're probably still going to need hay at certain times of the year. During drought, winter, periods when the grass isn't growing, or any time your animals are consuming forage faster than your pasture can recover. And even miniature cattle can eat a surprising amount. They're smaller cows. They're not solar powered. The advantage is that a smaller animal generally requires less total feed than a much larger animal. But less doesn't mean none. And I think that's something people should budget for before bringing one home. Right, Mabel? How much do you eat? Mabel says, I can eat lots, lots and lots. Ugh. Although we don't do it, rotational grazing could make a huge difference. We use our farm for many events, and we just have so many animals, we stress our acreage to the limit. If you're trying to raise cattle on limited acreage, one of the best things you can do is manage how they use the acreage. Instead of giving animals permanent access to every blade of grass you've got, you can divide your pasture into sections. Let them graze one section, then move them. This gives the previous section time to recover. That's what we call rotational grazing. How long animals stay in each section and how long the grass needs to recover is going to vary dramatically depending on the season and your location. The important thing is that you're watching the grass. Don't wait until they've eaten it down to dirt. Overgrazing doesn't just mean you temporarily run out of grass. You can damage the plant, expose the soil, encourage weeds, and make your pasture less productive in the future. And on a small farm, every square foot of productive pasture matters. Right, Mabel? Another thing, you probably shouldn't have just one. Here's another thing I consider before buying a mini cow. Cattle are herd animals. They naturally want companionship. That's one reason I personally like having more than one. Mabel has Rosie. Rosie has Ginger Snap. Ginger Snap has Mabel. And around here, they also have about 200 other animals they didn't ask for. But if you're considering bringing home one mini cow and sticking it alone in the pasture, I'd think seriously about its social needs. 2 compatible cattle are often going to be happier than one animal living completely alone. Of course, now we've created another problem. You came here trying to convince your spouse to let you buy one mini cow, and I'm telling you that you might need 2. You're welcome. Also, don't forget about fencing. And while miniature cattle may be smaller, they're still cows. You need good fencing. You need gates. You need access to clean water. You need shade or appropriate shelter for the climate. You need somewhere you can safely contain them if they're sick, injured, or need a veterinary care. And you need a plan for handling them. A friendly 500-pound animal is still a 500-pound animal. That's why I think it's so important to teach them boundaries and get them accustomed to people while they're young. Cute behavior from a 100-pound calf can become a dangerous problem, a dangerous behavior when that animal grows up. We learned that the hard way with T-Bone. You can see that in some of our past videos where we messed up and what that meant for T-Bone and my wife's knee. Bulls are a different conversation. A miniature bull is still a bull. T-Bone was raised around us and was extremely friendly when he was younger. But as he matured, his behavior changed. Eventually, we made the decision that keeping him here wasn't worth the risk. That's something I would strongly consider if you're getting into miniature cattle. If your goal is simply to have a few friendly cows on a small homestead, you don't necessarily need to own a bull. Breeding animals adds another level of responsibility, management, and risk. Don't let the word miniature give you a false sense of security. T-Bone was probably, I don't know, 600 or 800 pounds. And we were too friendly with him, and he lost fear, he lost respect, and he played rough, and I thought it was cute in the beginning, and really, I just reinforced bad behavior that turned it into a dangerous situation. So, are mini cows good for small farms? So after owning mini cattle ourselves, would I recommend them for a small farm? Absolutely. For the right farm. They're smaller than conventional cattle, right girl? Oh, they can consume less feed than their full-size counterparts. They can be incredibly friendly when they're handled properly. And if you've always dreamed about having cattle, but you don't want hundreds of acres, miniature cattle can be an option worth researching. But they're not lawn ornaments. They're livestock. Oh, livestock that gives cute kisses. Right, Mabel? You give cute kisses? Yes. Oh, your tongue's like sandpaper, Mabel. That hurts. Our 3 mini cows, for us, these 3 have been a pretty good fit. We've got Mabel, our half Mini Hereford, our half Mini Belted Galloway. We've got Rosie, our best guess is half Mini Angus type cross. And we've got little Ginger Snap, Rosie's daughter, whose daddy was half Mini Hereford and half Mini Belted Galloway, which makes Ginger Snap our little bit of everything cow. And honestly, that's perfectly fine with us. We're not trying to build a herd of registered show cattle. We're building a farm full of animals that we enjoy. And these 3 definitely qualify. And of course, you can add in Fletcher. He's just a big bundle of love. So, if you're thinking about adding mini cows to your small farm, my biggest advice would be this. Don't start by asking how many cows you can squeeze onto your property. Start by asking how many cows your property can comfortably support. Start small. Learn your pasture. Learn your animals. Improve your grazing system. And then decide whether you can handle more. Because it's really easy to buy another cow. Growing another 5 acres? That's a little harder. And if you're new to Hartland Oaks, we got a little bit of everything around here. Mini cows, mini donkeys, goats, horses, pigs, chickens, rabbits, you name it. And apparently, absolutely, no ability to tell an animal no. So subscribe and follow along. And let me know down in the comments if you could take one of our 3 mini cows home with you. Mabel, Rosie, Ginger Snap, which one would you pick? Although, Mabel says there's only one correct answer. Hartland Oaks signing out. Adios. We'll see you next time on the farm. This sunlight is bright and I got chores to do. Later, everybody.